Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to talk about how to play G.I. Joe Mission Critical. So the first part of this video I am creating solely for people who are familiar with the game system that Renegade Games is now calling the Guardian game system. So this is for veterans who have played Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid. So this is essentially the same game with some tweaks, some kind of quality of life upgrades, but also how you handle the Zords from Power Rangers in this game is different. So first of all is the universal deployment system. This enables them to not only you to combine different versions, so you could bring your Power Rangers in, and future games, the way they're describing it seems like they are going to turn other IPs into a Guardian system game, but this allows you to really use any location with any set of cards or characters. And what they have done here is created this deployment deck that utilizes these icons here. So these little tokens are going to be integral for you to keep up with and then place throughout the locations before the game. So it makes sense that say this is the laboratory, this is the space station, and we'll do this one there. You can mix them up, you can randomize them, it doesn't matter. But all this means is that no matter what is under here, you could put a Power Ranger location under here and it still has this token on it, and so all of these cards will send your deployments to that location. Then on the back side here, instead of Putty Patrol or Quantrons or specific Cobra operatives, they just have these two tokens here. So most games you're going to have two henchmen that are in the game, two styles of henchmen. So in the base game of Power Rangers, it was Putty Patrol and Super Putty Patrol. Here it is Cobra Battalion and I forget what those other guys are. But basically, before the game, you're just going to take your two things you're going to have here, and let's say, all right, we'll make the blue guys that one and the red guys that one. So as long as you can remember with a token, once you shuffle these up and you keep up with them, no matter what you have out there and no matter what locations you have out there, when you flip over, you're going to say, all right, I'm putting out two red Cobra Troopers to the Global Summit location. This could be New York. Next game, it could be Space Station Delta. You could even, say, swap out a Quatron from Power Rangers to say, all right, my next deployment is going to be two blue Cobra Troopers to now the Space Station Delta. And I'm looking for one specifically. Here we go. Now 3 Quatrons are going to the military compound, which now is New York City. So this enables them to utilize these tokens and this one deck of cards as a deployment deck for all future systems. Now, they probably will have, I don't know whether they're going to come out with tokens like this for Power Rangers, because these are definitely G.I. Joe themed as well as these cards, but I'm sure future game systems will have these tokens where you're simply just putting out 4 tokens onto the board and 2 tokens for the henchmen, and then you're good to go. So that is the universal deployment system. That's brand new. That's more a quality of life thing, really, for the game and for future games, for future iterations of the game. Next up is the shared energy pool. So in Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, you would take 2 energy at the beginning of every battle, place it into a shared energy pool, but then you also had energy that was on your particular character. You could add it if you want to. In this game, everything at the start of battle and everyone that's taking part in the battle has to place their energy into the shared energy pool, and everything sits in a shared energy pool throughout the battle. And then at the end of battle, any extra energy is then passed out amongst the characters who participated in the battle, up to 1 per player. You get to choose how it is passed back out. So if you don't use energy, you don't lose it. In Power Rangers, it used to be, all right, well, definitely use up the energy in the shared pool first, because if you don't use it, it's going to go away, and you always wanted to have, try and keep 1 on your person. So in this, now moving forward, everything is just going into a shared energy pool. You can store up to 1 on your character in between, and then add it at the beginning of battle, and you have to add it. It's not optional. All right. The last thing that really the only thing you need to know about playing G.I. Joe, if you're familiar with the Power Ranger system, is the vehicle cards. So at the beginning of the game, you will deal out 3 random cards. And so some of these cards you'll see are part of the vehicle upgrade pack. That was part of the Kickstarter, a little foil deck of cards. So you have 3 vehicles here. Now in the Power Rangers, as you defeated bad guys, they would go on a track similar to this, and when you filled it up, you would gain the next random Zord, and it would go to whichever color Power Ranger you drew it, or any random Power Ranger. In this case, you're going to still be stacking up the henchmen onto this grid, like so, as you defeat them. Then, if you want to use a vehicle, and using a vehicle does not count as an action, it can be done at any point in the battle, you simply have to discard or take off of this grid the number of henchmen here equal to the cost. So you can see we could not use the slugger in this instance because we only have 4 henchmen on the board here. But if we wanted to say use the shark, we could take these 3 guys off, put them back in the supply, use the shark. It's technically a passive ability, so we would want to keep it up and out somewhere where we can see it. But then when we're done with it, it goes into a discard pile off to the side. And at the end of the battle, you would flip over a new one. So if, for example, you had, let me get one more here, a setup that looked like this, you could either use the slugger and get rid of all of these guys, or I could use the shark and the falcon. Okay, but then I don't have anything else to use unless I gain 4 more or 5 more henchmen in this battle. Put 5 more out here, which maximum you're only ever going to get is 4. This does not get refilled until the end of battle. But that's very simple, very straightforward way about how you use the vehicles. They don't belong to any particular person. They're kind of a one-time use thing. And then once you use them, you discard them. If your pile ever runs out, and the vehicle pack more than doubles the amount of vehicles you have. So that's not as likely. But if for some reason you run out of vehicles, you simply shuffle your discard pile and start it back. One last thing, when you defeat a lieutenant or a nemesis, you will gain one of these tokens. This is simply a free-to-use vehicle token. You can use a vehicle. It's kind of an odd symbol. To me, it seems like you would deal out a 4th vehicle. But this is, I could use the slugger. If I had this token, this goes back into the supply without taking people off the board. Also, if this ever fills up, you can't add any more. So if this is getting close to being full, go ahead and use some. Use a vehicle, get one, use one that you don't necessarily think you're going to need, get it out of there, because this is the maximum number of henchmen you can hold to then spend to use your vehicles. And that's going to do it for our rules that are different from Power Rangers. For those of you who are veterans of the game system, hopefully this can help you get playing the game pretty quickly. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with the Guardian game system or have never played Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid, this is a rule set that will hopefully get you playing if this is your first time experiencing the game. So, the game takes place over an undetermined number of rounds until you have revealed the boss, which you can predetermine before the game starts, and then they're randomly mixed into the deployment deck here. Until you reveal the boss and then defeat the boss, you are not victorious. However, if you ever lose all locations, which means they all become panicked, they would have a token on them like this. So if all 4 have a panic token on them, or if every time one of your Joes is knocked out, you have to remove one of these tokens from the command center in the middle. If all of these are gone and a Joe gets knocked out, then you have also lost the game. So that's kind of the goal of the game. Each round of the game starts with the deployment phase. So you're going to take this deck, which is a universal deck now for this game system. If you watched the former part of this video, you'll know how this works. But just so you are aware, you'll have this. It's best to keep this somewhere where you can kind of discard cards next to each other. So you're going to ignore the top of this first card, and then you'll flip this one over. So what this is telling you is that you're going to deploy 2 of this type of soldier to this location. So we look here, we see that we've designated the blue soldiers as that type, and this location as our global summit location. So we're going to take 2 of these guys, put them in there. All right, we're going to do this 5 times. So here we go. Research Lab gets 2 blue. The Global Summit gets 3 red. The Global Summit gets 3 blue. Now, at this point, we have reached, by placing this one, we have reached our maximum capacity for Space Station Delta, which is 6. So this would now be panicked, okay? And any excess troopers go clockwise around the board to the next location. So those guys will be placed into the Jungle Laboratory. And we've got 1 more card we need to flip. 1 blue in the military compound, which in this instance is New York. Okay? If you are ever flipping these cards over and you flip one over like this and you see that there's a lieutenant or a nemesis or boss card that's the next card, you're going to have to flip that one over too. In this instance, we would need to put now 2 can't get them out of my supply. 2 blue troopers along with Major Blood into the here he is, into the military compound. So that's not going to push this one over the edge. It's going to make it very close. But all of these guys, and you always place the lieutenant first. So if any excess has to spill over, it's the Cobra troopers. That guy would go there like that. But that was more than 5 cards, so let's just pull these guys back. That's our deployment phase. So after you've deployed, you can take this guy, any lieutenant or boss or nemesis cards, you can put them off to the side, but you're going to want to take these cards, shuffle them up, and add them to the bottom of the deck. The way you build the deck and setup puts the boss near the bottom quarter of the deck. So this means that if you reach the boss, but it takes you a while to defeat him, he's still going to be spawning people during the deployment phase because you keep shuffling the just standard cards back into the bottom. But that's the deployment phase. After that, it is the action phase. And that's where the majority of the game takes place. So during your action phase, you have 3 choices you can make. And in a standard game, each player, each hero character gets 2 actions they can take. So the first action is to move. Everybody always starts in the command center in the middle, and then you can move to any location you want for a single action. So you could go here, which would be silly because there's nobody here. You could go here, or say you started a new round and you were here and you really want to go over and take care of this. That is still just 1 movement. All of these locations are connected as far as adjacency is concerned. 1 movement puts you anywhere else. You can also move back to the command center. If you do, moving back here, when you enter the command center, you can take all of your cards that are in your discard pile, shuffle them back into your draw deck, and it's basically like a full recovery. But to get back into battle, you would have to move and spend your other action. So keep that in mind. So that's movement. That's very simple, very straightforward. 1 action, you would flip this over, move your character to whatever location you want. The second is battle, and we're going to talk about battle in a second because it needs much more detail to be discussed. The last is recover, so you don't have to go back into the command center to fully recover. You can recover out in the field. Now, let's just say here's Duke's specific deck of cards that he's going to be taking his actions with in battle. And let's just say, for example, he's already played these, we'll say 4 cards, all right? And he wants to recover. So what he's going to do is he's going to look through his discard pile. He can look completely. There's no hidden information here. And he can choose up to 6 shields worth of cards to take back and shuffle into his deck. So he could take these 2 cards, or he could take these 3 cards. It's entirely dependent on the number of shields. You cannot take excess, so you could not say take you know, that and be like, oops, you know, it's got to be 6 or less. You can take less, but you would take that number of cards and say he wants these 2, and you would shuffle them back into your deck. All right, that's a way to recover some of your cards, not all of them, but some of them, but it does cost you an action to do. Okay, but keeps you from having to move into the command center and move out. So it's a smaller recovery, but for only 1 action, whereas a full recovery technically takes 2 to get in and get out of the command center. The last action you can take is battle. It's important to note that to start a battle, it simply takes 1 Joe, a single action, to start a battle. But anybody else that's sharing that location with them can join in the battle for free. They don't have to spend their action. So in this instance, say, you know, Duke and Stalker have already spent 1 movement each to move to this location. These tokens are driving me bonkers. Have spent 1 token each to move into this location. Duke can flip over his second action to do battle, to go into battle, and Stalker can join him and still have his token left over to spend at any given point in time. So when you start a battle, the first thing you want to do is you know, prepare. So you're going to place 2 energy into the shared energy pool. Any energy that is on your hero, you can store up to 1 energy. So if you have an energy stored on your hero, that goes in as well. And then each character, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, can draw up to 5 cards. Now, this is optional. You don't have to draw a full hand of 5. Why would you not want to do that? We'll get into more detail of it later. But when you get hit, when you take damage in battle, you have to discard cards off your deck up to the amount of shields that will cover the damage. And if your deck ever runs out of cards, you're knocked out, and to be revived, you have to take a energy from the command center. And if that happens, you know, basically, if in a standard game, if 4 heroes are knocked out, you lose the game. So you may want to reserve some cards in your deck for defense. Or you just feel like, I've got exactly what I need in my hand. I don't need to draw anymore. Those are the instances where you may not draw up to 5. After you have prepared your heroes, you need to prepare the enemy board here. And so they have given you this board. You don't need to use this board, but it just helps keep everything organized. So you can see here that there is 6 total troopers at this location, between 3 blue and 3 red. You can only, however, take on 4 troopers at any given time. So you can decide, are we going to take on all of the Cobra Troopers and 1 Crimson Guard? Are we going to try and take out the 3 Crimson Guard first because they're the toughest? But if there is more than 4, you have to deal out 4 cards. But you get to kind of choose. So let's just say, for example, we're going to split them and we're going to take on 2 and 2. All right, these 2 guys are just kind of be off to the side. At that point, you're going to take your action card decks specific to the various characters. So here we have the blue characters and here we have the red characters. And since we're taking on 2 blue characters, we're going to take and deal out 2 cards. And you always start from left to right. Now you'll notice here that these 2 cards both have the fast keyword. And even though I shuffled the deck, both of them came out the same. Anytime a card comes out with the fast keyword, it needs to be placed to the left and push everything else to the right. So now we have 2 Crimson Guard cards, like that, and there we go. So here is our 4 action cards. These are the 4 actions that the bad guys, the henchmen, are going to take. And we are going to get to play cards out of our hands to try and take these cards out. For every card that we take out a miniature, and it goes on the board, giving us the ability to purchase uses of vehicles. So there's actually all 3 keywords here that you need to pay attention to. First of all is the fast keyword. We already talked about that, but let's just say, for example, that this card was the last one dealt. It would still be brought up. Everything else would be pushed down, and it would be put at the front. Not only does fast mean that it's going to be near the front of the action. It also means that the troopers now get to act first. So it's almost like having the surprise keyword or the initiative keyword or something like that. Next up is guard. So guard protects cards on either side of it. Also, if there was a card up here, we'll talk about that in a second, it would guard that one as well. So these two cards cannot take any damage until this one is defeated. You'll notice, however, that this one also has the guard keyword. Two guard cards cannot guard each other. So in this case, you could go after the guard cards first. You kind of have to focus on the guard cards before you focus on anything else. But in this instance, you could go after the fast card. You just can't go after this one because of the guard card here. And the last one is passive. So passive, as long as this card is face up, the passive ability is in effect. So even when you're actioning this card here, this passive ability is still in effect. Now, if we focus on this card early and flip it over, then the passive ability has no effect. All right. When it is the various turns of battle, it's going to be the heroes take an action by playing a card, rolling some dice, hopefully putting some damage counters on the card, and then the enemies get to take an action. But, and I like to use, a token like this, if you can say, knock this card out, let's ignore the fast keyword, and then they activate, that card is flipped over, we're done activating, so no effect. The enemies actually don't take any action. And if you can stay ahead and flip cards over, they say to turn cards sideways once you've defeated them. I like to put something on them because then they all fit on the board. Then you would, so let's just do a quick example here, and we'll even use the fast keyword without actually rolling any dice. This card would activate first because it's fast. Any fast card after that is ignored. But this card would activate. They would drain one energy from our pool, discard one vehicle from the power board, and then it would be our turn. Let's just say Duke plays as all-out attack. He does enough damage to take out this card. Okay, so I've taken one action as the heroes. We get to choose. Then the Cobra Troopers or the Crimson Guard would activate. They would go here. And they would say, all right, well, there's nothing there, so they actually don't take an action. Well, then it's our turn again. And maybe Stalker plays his Sergeant Stalker card and is able to take out this one. So he flips it over. And then when it comes to their turn, they would activate this card. Again, it's flipped over, so they don't take an action. All while, we're removing, for every card we flip over, we're removing actual characters from the board, placing them on our vehicle board. So that's kind of the hope of your turns, the battles, to be in your favor. You want to kind of stay ahead of how the enemy is activating their cards, which is always from left to right. Now, let's say, for example, that a lieutenant was in the mix here. All right. The lieutenant is also going to get a set of deployment cards. Theirs are going to be 4. And theirs are also going to go up here. So you see that first one that came out was a fast card. So it's already at the front. This one also has fast and guard, though. So this one would push up as well. And that kind of changes the dynamic of how cards are guarded. So you'll notice that this one has fast and guard. So this one is guarding this one. It's also guarding this one. I believe. I'll have to check on that, whether or not lieutenant cards guarded down. This one definitely is guarding this one and this one. All right, this one is definitely guarding this one as well. So in order to take out Ceaseless March, which is a 5 health card, you'd have to take out these two first before you can even attempt to put damage on this one. But the lieutenant always gets 4 cards, and then say, for example, this is what it looked like. You simply just wouldn't deal out the Cobra Troopers. You would just deal out the 2 for the Crimson Guard. Again, this changes the whole who's guarding what portion. Also, the order of activation for a battle like this would start with the lieutenant's first left card, go all the way across, and then come down here. So the troopers are actually not going to activate until the lieutenant has taken up to 4 actions. If you do damage to one of these cards, you can flip it over, but at the end of battle, you're going to want to put it in a specific discard pile. Once the lieutenant has suffered 4 cards into their discard pile, then they are defeated. And it's also not until the end of battle that that happens. For bosses like Cobra Commander or Destro, you're going to need 8 cards. So, which means you're in no way, shape, or form going to be able to take out a boss in a single battle. It's going to take at least 2 battles to take out a boss. Once you are in the midst of battle, you're going to have your hand of 5 cards that you drew at the beginning of the battle, and you get to choose to play them at any given point in time. So Duke could take, say, 3 actions in a row, 3 turns in a row, or you could go back and forth, Duke, Stalker, Duke, Stalker. It's entirely up to you guys. Now you have different types of cards. You have attack cards here. Generally they have a number of dice on them that you're going to roll. These are going to be the main ways to put damage on those cards. You also have reaction cards. These are cards that can be played at any time or when specified. So in this case it says, play this card when any hero performs an attack. So this can be played out of turn, per se. Usually they cost 0. And then you would just do the effect. And there's also maneuver cards. This may allow you to push a fast card around, or in this case, this one allows you to use a vehicle at 1 less the cost. Again, this is a 0, but this still counts. This one still counts as you playing your card on your turn. Reaction cards do not count as you playing a card. So let's just say, for example, that Duke wants to play his kind of standard card here, All Out Attack. So you can see 3 dice symbols, and it also says you may re-roll any number of dice during this attack. Now we see some cards here that all have the guard keyword, and these 2 cards are actually both guarding up above, and then there's this card. So let's start down here, and I'm going to go after the guard passive card right here. So I'm looking to do 2 damage. So I have 3 dice, so I would take 3 dice in hand, and I would go ahead and roll them out. Now this is actually a really nice roll. I got 4 damage. Unfortunately, there's no splash damage, at least for this card. Some cards do allow you to put excess damage on other cards, but in this case, I have definitely done the amount of damage I need to. This card can be flipped over, and now when we get to the end of all the activations, this card doesn't do anything. But I've also removed the passive ability, and I've also removed the guard off of this card. So I could have re-rolled any number of dice, but I didn't need to. I place this in my discard pile. I don't draw new cards. I now only have 4 cards in hand. All right. Then in this example, Major Blood would go. So we would activate this card here, and this card would say, all right, deal 2 damage to each hero twice. That's pretty nasty. So the way you deal with damage is you're going to start losing cards from your deck. Now in this case, he's damaging both heroes, and he's doing it in 2 different instances. So it's not 4 total damage, it's 2 damage twice. And that's important because when you are defending, you're going to take the top card of your deck that you cannot see and you're going to flip it over. In this case, you can see that I have 2 shields. All right, so I have blocked his damage with exactly what I need, but I needed to use this attack. So this attack card goes into my discard pile. He does that twice now. All right, so let's flip over this one. And that's a perfect example because this one has 3 shields. I actually overblocked. I have an excess amount, so I get to take this card and place it back on the bottom of my deck. All right, I don't get to keep it on top where I know I will flip it over and over and over again. It goes onto the bottom of my deck, but I didn't have to lose it. So I still have it here because your deck is essentially your life, your health points, so we know it's there. In this instance, Stalker would have to do the same thing. He would have to look at his top card. He would say, okay, ooh, I blocked it. All right, this one goes on the bottom. I didn't lose that card. And then he's got to block again. In this case, he doesn't block it, and there's still damage left. He's only blocked 1. So now he has to flip over another one. Okay? In this instance, he has gone over. He only needed to block 1 more. He's blocked 3. So he gets to take this card, put it on the bottom of his deck. This card is discarded. So that's how you deal with taking damage as heroes. If, for example, I had, let's just ignore guard keywords and things like that. Say I had targeted this card with my Ceaseless March, and I believe I did 4 damage, which is pretty good, but it's not 5. So I would simply just take 1, 2, 3, need one more, 4 damage counters on that card, and that damage would carry over, so maybe Stalker comes in after me and does 1 single hit on that card and flips it over. Now, something I breezed over, in order to play this card, I need to spend 1 energy. Our shared pool is way up here off camera, but I would need to spend 1 energy to play this card. If there is no energy in the shared pool, I can't play this card. All right, maybe I could play Rollout for free. All right, use a vehicle at 1 less cost. Or let's see if Stalker has anything here. He has Attack card that allows him to roll dice for free. Or he maybe plays Squad Tactics, which is a maneuver card. This would count as his card play for that turn, but he is gaining energy. So this is actually a really nice card because he puts an energy in the pool, and then it says another hero may immediately play an additional card. So Duke then could toss in a card to play and take an action using the energy that Stalker just put in the action pool. And that's pretty much it. Again, there are special abilities that each character has. So most of them say once per battle, a hero of your choice may reroll any number of dice during an attack. And over here, once per battle, when a hero reveals a card with a star ability, we just saw one of those here a second ago. That would be like this one right here. For defense, deal 1 damage to an enemy card of your choice. So pay attention to the special abilities of your characters. Make sure you use them because that helps turn the tide. But otherwise, you simply go until you have either flipped over all the cards and defeated all the cards, or this token has passed over and activated all the cards in the system. Then you get 1 more turn, and at that point, anybody that's still standing stays on the board, and you'll have to take another battle action in order to defeat them. During battle, you're going to have access to your vehicle board here. So there's always going to be at the start of battle 3 vehicles that are randomly placed into these 3 slots. In order to use these vehicles, you need to spend defeated troopers off of this board. So anytime you defeat a trooper over here, it's placed in one of these circles until it is filled up. So for example, in this instance, if I wanted to say defeat or use the pack rat here, I would need to remove 3 troopers from the board here, and then I can deal 1 damage to 3 different enemy cards. So this is a great way to deal out multiple damage to other cards, or in this instance, you don't have to respect the guard keyword. So you could deal a damage to a card that is guarded. The guard keyword only keeps you from targeting said card with one of your action cards. So say I use the pack rat, I've dealt my damage, this goes into a discard pile. You don't refill yet, but even though I only have 2 troopers here, let's say for example in playing through my turns, I target some of the Crimson Guard cards, I knock out 2 more enemies, but I still have Major Blood here. I could activate either the HAL or the APC. Let's do the HAL here. So I've just accumulated them, but I can then instantly spend them when it's my turn or one of my players' turns to then activate the HAL. This one then goes away. Again, you don't refill, but that's how you utilize the vehicle cards in the game. You spend the troopers that you have defeated. So as you defeat troopers, you place them on these rings, and then you spend them in order to activate the vehicles. At the end of battle, any energy that has not been spent out of the shared energy pool gets distributed back to the heroes, up to 1 per hero. So in this instance, there's only 1. We get to choose. Is it going to go to Stalker or is it going to go to Duke? If there was 2, 1 could go to each. If there was 3, 1 would be lost back to the supply. Also, you're going to refresh the vehicle board with the cards here. If this deck ever runs out and you need to refresh, just simply take your discard pile, shuffle it, and create a new deck. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how battles work in G.I. Joe Mission Critical. And that essentially is how the game works. There's nothing else you really need to know. There are some specific nuances of how things play out. There's also specific rules if you are playing two-handed. Essentially, you're going to combine 2 heroes and 2 heroes. So you'll have a squad of 4, but your 2 heroes will always move together, activate together, and they share a combined deck. You have a bigger hand size. That is my preferred way to play, especially as solo. Or you could play 3 heroes. You get some extra buffs. Obviously, the game was designed to play with 4 heroes, 4 different players. But there are ways to mitigate your player count. Those are all in the rulebook. Again, your objective is to, A, keep 4 locations from being panicked. In order to remove a panic token, you actually have to completely clear a location. There has to be nobody there in order to remove the panic token. So you want to keep locations from being panicked. You obviously want to stay alive and not die more than 4 times in a standard game. And then you want to defeat the boss. So in the standard game, let's see, Cobra Commander would come out onto the board. You would have to defeat 8 of his cards in total over the course of several battles. Once you've done that, you are victorious as the Joes. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Again, if you are a veteran to the gaming system, please make sure you watch just the beginning of the video because I covered only the new stuff that you would need to know there. I will be doing a two-handed playthrough, so essentially a solo playthrough of the game coming up soon on the channel, so keep an eye out for that. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.